will be made public on the Turn It On YouTube channel, so anything that you say will be recorded, and if you decide to switch your camera on, that will be recorded, and to make you aware, that will be then available on the internet for anybody to view. If you don't wish to unmute your mic and ask a question, which you are perfectly welcome to do, you can always pop a question into the conversation, and then I will come back and check that periodically to address anything that is in there. Today we are going to look at Flipgrid, and exclusively looking at Flipgrid about how that can empower pupil voice, and also how you can use it to gain feedback, not just from pupils and students, but also from other areas of the school as well. Because we work with Microsoft, we would like to gift you this afternoon a Microsoft Education Centre code, and I'll give you that at the end of the session. If you haven't used the Microsoft Education Centre before, it's quick and easy to find. If you open up a web browser and you search for either the MEC or Microsoft Education Centre, it will come up on screen like the shot I've got there at the moment. In the top right hand corner, you can log in with your school email address or personal email address, and then I will show you on another screenshot later on where you can redeem the code it will give you, and that will say that you've come along to one of the custom sessions that we're running today to be trained on Flipgrid. The Microsoft Education Centre itself is a really good place to find different courses, and there's a couple of courses in there on Flipgrid itself, and some of those are in what's called learning pathways, such as the 21st Century Skills pathway. So for today, you'll get 1,000 points given to you, and that will make you a certified Microsoft Innovative Educator, and that may lead you to explore other avenues such as becoming a Microsoft Educator Expert, and Turn It On and running a course for that as well if you wish to make an application. We've got lots of webinars recorded on our YouTube channel should you wish to watch them back. Some people that have started these qualifications have found it really useful, and then they've wanted to give back. So we've got some people that have become MIEE trainers or master trainers, and they're either transforming their school and the way that they work digitally, or they're working with other schools if they're in a trust and there's a group of academies, or with schools in a local area. As I said, later on I will come back and I will give you the code for that. So when you've got the code, you can redeem it when you're logged into the Microsoft Education Centre, and that will automatically then credit to your account. Today, back to Flipgrid. Flipgrid itself is a web-based piece of software. It sits in the M365, the Microsoft 365 family. You will find it in the app launcher if your Office 365 has been updated, but you can also find it on the internet as well, and you'll find out in a minute where you can go for that. It's really useful for giving students a voice and a platform to share their ideas or stimulate discussions. I've also found it very useful as a teacher for getting assessment feedback, sometimes during a topic, or if we just need to mix things up a bit and find different ways of students speaking with me or sharing their ideas with me. So before we go over to the actual Flipgrid software itself, I'm just going to have a look at a little bit of background on Flipgrid. When you come to Flipgrid itself, you create a grid or a group, as it's now called, and those can be for different groups themselves. So it could be that you've got a group for your class that you teach, or it might be a set if you're in a secondary school and you work within a subject and you have different sets in different year groups. It could be a subject itself, and that tends to lend itself really nicely to a primary school setting or even college sometimes. It could be around a learning community. So by learning community, it might be that you have a enrichment club or an after school club that you work with, and you've got a group of pupils or students that come along to that, and you want to make an area for them. So you've got a group that's in Flipgrid for them. It could be a staff community. I've got quite a few schools now that have explored using this, particularly during lockdown, where staff weren't face to face. They were asking staff to leave certain messages or capture their opinions, and when they couldn't have always a staff meeting, maybe some people weren't available to join a virtual meeting over Teams, they were getting them to leave their feedback in Flipgrid and then discussing that at the following staff meeting. Or it could be that you're using a group for whole school. That might be whole school for students, or it might be whole school for staff. Had one school that were looking at changing the way that lunches worked in a secondary setting, different times, different catering company, different sorts of foods. And they asked the students to leave their feedback via Flipgrid videos. And that was really effective. And then some of that was shared with parents as well as a senior leadership team. And it really gave a flavour of the strong feeling there was between the students of the decisions that were going to be made. So Flipgrid really gives a massive student voice platform, but also a staff voice platform. So once you've got your group, you will then add topics in to your group or your grid. And the topics are there really to do several things. It might be, as I've already said, to stimulate a discussion or a debate, as we've mentioned with the example there about changing the lunches. Could be that you are just exploring a concept or an idea and you want that to be captured as an initial point to then feed into a longer project or to steer learning that you're planning. And all of that can be achieved through using Flipgrid as well. It could be that you set a challenge and then the students are feeding back their responses to the challenge, how they've overcome it, how they've got their problems and they've got the solutions to those problems. And they can do that in more of a creative way with Flipgrid. Well, they're not just limited to video, there is text as well. But students warm to it very quickly because it's got a sort of social media element to it, although it's safe and you don't have to have safeguarding concerns. You will see a little bit how it can be configured to be very much ring fenced within your education community. Could be to celebrate something. I've got a few primary schools that have decided to use Flipgrid now. Instead of having levers books, they're having levers Flipgrid videos, and the levers are each recording their short videos for each other. And they found that as a really engaging way. The pupils have really gone for that in year 6. They're quite excited about creating a levers book online. There's no reason to believe that couldn't work for year 11 or something in a secondary setting. And I find Flipgrid works universally across whichever educational phase you are in. It's something that pupils at primary or students in secondary or college all warm to, and they all find it useful. I wouldn't use it all of the time, like anything, but when I come to bring it out as a tool in my arsenal for teaching, it's always well received, and people get really excited about tapping into it and using it to give feedback. Once we get through to the platform in a moment, I'll show you how we create those grids and we lock those topics inside. There are various ways to then easily share and distribute, but also control who can join into those topics or grids. So you've got complete control over it as a teacher, and there's no worries there about somebody external getting in if you don't want them to be getting in, but you can make it open to everyone if you wish. So there's a high degree of customization in Flipgrid as well if you want to. Once you get around to it, as I've already alluded to, it works on pretty much any device, whether you're working in a Google school and you've got Chromebooks. Although Microsoft owns Flipgrid, it will work quite happily with a Google login as it will with an Office 365 login, so you don't have to have Office 365 to use Flipgrid. It works on lots of different devices, mobile phones, tablets, laptops, desktops. If you are using a desktop, it does need to have a web camera and a microphone on it for people to make responses to grids or topics. But most of the time they're easily sourced. Although having said that, during the pandemic, they were a bit harder to get hold of. So when people make responses, they upload short videos. You can determine the length of those videos. They can also add things on, such as effects and graphics on those videos, or they might want to add text or captions underneath. And that makes quite a rich experience for you as a teacher getting information back in. If I have sometimes made responses to media-based projects or more creative subjects that I might have been working in primary, I've sometimes left students' video responses in here as well. So there's various ways that you can work with this, and it doesn't have to be very rigid. It's quite flexible. It's quite fluidic in the way that you use it. So the first thing you're going to need to do is sign up as an educator, and then I will in a moment walk you through how to make a grid and how to add those topics, and then how to configure it and invite others to make responses. And I'll show you some examples of grids and topics that I've used with other groups and let you see exactly what it looks like so you can visualize it. So the way that I would give you an analogy to think of how Flipgrid is structured, The grid or the group is like a book. The topics are like chapters in that group or that book. And then the reply or the response is like the page, the bit or the section of the page, the paragraph. Is the best way that you can try and visualize and understand how this digital platform sits together. Once you've used it for a while, it's not that daunting. It's quite easy to get to grips with, and it flows in a very similar way. So just move over and we'll go and have a look at the real Flipgrid. First of all, I'll show you about logging in, and then I'll show you what one of those grids look like. So just share my other screen with you now. So what you should see is the login screen for Flipgrid. So I've not decided to pick it up from Office 365, but if I was in Office 365, I could go to the app launcher, and there is Flipgrid. If you don't see Flipgrid in your app launcher, and I've pinned mine in there because I use it so frequently, you can go to all apps and it will be in the list alphabetically under F. But what I've decided to do is just go straight to a web browser, and I'm using Microsoft Edge today. And I've looked in Edge for Flipgrid. It comes up as the #1 hit, and then it will give you some choices. If you've not used it before, that's where you go, Educator Sign Up. And when you get to Educator Sign Up, if you are a Google school, you can sign in with your Google account. If you're a Microsoft school, you can log in with your Office 365 account. Whichever way, you get to the same endpoint. All of the features are available, so there's nothing limited if you're not a Microsoft customer. Because Microsoft own this and it's part of their portfolio, it doesn't mean they're going to detract in any way from your experience. If you have been here before, you simply go to login, and when you go to login, you select your Microsoft account, then it will suggest my Microsoft account that I've got. It's the one I'm using here today, and then I log through. So I've already logged in on another browser, and I'll swap over for you now, and then we'll look at it, what it's like in a logged in way. Are there any questions so far? Anything anyone's wondering? Or if anybody's had a go at using this elsewhere, I'd be more than happy to hear what you've been doing with it so we can just get a better understanding. Feel free to pop them into the conversation. I can pick them up from there. Just trying to swap screens. Hopefully it's going to work with me in a minute. Okay, there we go. So once you're logged in, you'll arrive at your Flipgrid. Because I've been using my Flipgrid, I've got my groups or grids as they were previously called down the bottom here. So I've been using it with various different projects. Some are pupil student focused, such as the Eco group, which is a science environmental group. And also then some adults where I've worked with, for instance, a community of staff at Turn It On. So there's, as I said, there's lots of different ways that you can use this in lots of different audiences it will suit. Don't think it's just for staff and pupils or students. I've also seen Flipgrid used to capture the opinions of parents, so you can make a Flipgrid open so parents can contribute, and parents actually have responded pretty much universally in a positive way. They've liked just clicking a link or scanning a QR code, as you'll see, and then making a quick response on usually on their mobile device, and then the school will pick that up. They've preferred that in many of the feedbacks that they've given to having to type something or fill in a form. So it's another way to engage with the demographic around you. I've seen governors use this as well. So I've had governing bodies pick this tool up and use it to capture opinion about changes that are being proposed that the governing body is working on. So there's quite a wide range of audiences here that you could bring in. If you want to toggle between your groups and topics, there's a button at the top now. That was a recent addition from Flipgrid. So here I've got my group selected, but if I want to see the topics that sit within my groups, I can toggle over to the topics and they're all listed down here. I'm going to move back to the groups, and what we'll do first of all is go through and have a look at how to create a group. So we'll make up a group and then we'll make up a topic inside of it. The group button, group create button is over here on the right. So I'll press that. What you can do is pick an image. Now, if we had more time, we could go and search for an image that fits with the Flipgrid group that we are going to create. But you can also pick up some that are just given to you from Microsoft. I think we'll stay with what looks like a desert type scene. Oh, let's try. What does that look like? You'll have that one, more of a scientific nature. So that should, how far I actually locked it in, update my cover image. That should stay there at the top. and then you need to give your group a name. So we'll call this, let's call it environment. And you get to choose whether your group is immediately active and visible to others, or whether you want to make it hidden and build it in private. And I would like to make it hidden, and I'm going to hide that group, which means I can happen to work on it whenever I've got time. Might be prepping it over a week, ready to then make it active and visible to others. So while it's hidden, it's only visible to me in my login. Nobody else can see it, and it will stay private. Then you can decide, well, who's going to participate in this Flipgrid group. You might want to email people, so you can email your students and you can pop the email addresses in. You can pop them in one by one, or you can upload a CSV file. So if you've got an MIS system that's capable of exporting lots of email addresses, then that's absolutely fine to go and get those exported. You might have a data manager in the office or an admin team that can get you that CSV. You can do it by student usernames. So what you can do is you can plug them in, first name, forename, surname, and then what their username is going to be on screen. Again, if you've got those on another CSV, which is like a spreadsheet, you can bring that in. Or as you can see from up here, if you're a Google school, you can link to Google Classroom. You can also link this to Teams as well, as you'll see in a few minutes. So it is very much an open platform that suits all different types of schools and the technologies they might be using. So I'm going to say that I'm going to add in a student email here, and I think for that student email, what I will do is I will pick my work email. So let's have and that will be locked in. So that's in there. That's the one person I'm going to have in here. Notifications for me about changes that are going on in this group. You usually want to know what's going on, so I tend to leave that as daily. If you know it's a group, it's not a group that you're going to use all the time, like an eco group, you could change it to weekly. It's however you want it to be, and in there you've got the option to never receive, but you would have to log in then. You can have the group notifications go to other people in the group, but unless you really want the students to know what about the other students posting, I would leave that toggle to off, and then you can create your group. So that will happen quite quickly. Once your group's created, you can get a code for your group. It's either going to be a name you've chosen, so you could call it environment or envir, or whatever you want to have, or it will just pick a random string of letters and numbers. You just copy that and post it. So you might want to post that into your team if you've got a class team, or email it around a group of students if you're in secondary. If you're working in a primary setting, that's not always the most practical way to do it. So there's a Teams button there to link to. There's a Google Classroom button to post it into chat there as well. You can, if you want, you can copy the code to embed, and that means you can pop it into a website. So if you've got class pages on a school website, you can pop it in there, and then it will link through to Flipgrid. But what I tend to use quite a bit are QR codes. So you can download a copy, which will come out as A4, or you can right click at the copy. So I do pop those in Teams as well if I'm using Teams. And then providing the class has got camera enabled devices, you can just hold the camera over and they won't have to type in any sorts of URLs or go in a web browser. The minute they scan the QR code, it will take them there. You can even embed it in things like newsletters for parents if you want them to scan it with their device at home. And I've also seen things like these popped up around the classroom or on the outside of a window in an admin area if you're not inviting people in for COVID reasons at the moment, and they can scan that QR code, up comes the Flipgrid, they make their response. So it doesn't have to be really hard to get it in there. And there are other ways of doing it on social media as well, such as Twitter there. So there's quite a scope there to get your group shared, to get audiences in. It might be that you do want to share the group, but more often than not, you want to share the topic inside of the group. So I tend to not share the group, but sharing a topic is exactly the same way, and you'll see that very soon. You can decide to add a colleague as a co-pilot. If you are working on this, maybe you are 2 form entry, 3 form entry primary school, or maybe you work in a subject area in a secondary and there's 6, 8 of you in a maths department or a science department, and you know you're going to use this across a couple of different sets. You can add a co-pilot. You can put in the name of the person who is the member of staff in your school that you want to create this with, and it means you both then have joint admin rights, and it would stay hidden still, but it be hidden for the students and the other staff except the members of staff that you add in as co-pilots. If you want to edit anything again at any point, you click the edit button and it will take you back in, and then you just update the group at the end once you've made those choices. There are a few more options hidden in the end here. If you know that this is a group or a type of group you're going to use frequently, instead of having to build it from the ground up every single time, you can duplicate it. If you have to, you can delete it. In here is where you can integrate it with Teams. If you click that, it gives you your integration, particularly around the sharing of videos and getting notifications of those videos. You can enter the link for your team in there. I come out of that, or you can export the data. So some people say, well, I do want to delete my group, but I don't want to lose the data associated with the group or the topics within it. Well, you can export that and it will come out for you so you can retain a copy if you need to. Down the bottom here, I've got my topics. So that's the header, if you like. That's the book. These topics sit like chapters inside the book, as we used the analogy earlier. You've got another toggle button here to move between the students that are enrolled, and you can see there's just me enrolled at the moment. You can add more at a later date if you wish. And here will be the topics. You always get the default hello I am topic, and it always comes in as active. If you don't want that there, after you've created another topic, you can take that out. So we'll next create a topic. Before I do, are there any questions about creating a group, managing a group, options for a group at all? Feel free to pop any questions there into the conversation, or you can unmute and speak to me if you wish. Nothing at this time. If not, I will just carry on with the topic creation. So you click on the blue button there on the right hand side to create your topic, and it's a similar flow to creating the group, but you do need to give your topic a title. So we're looking at environments. We're going to call this one school grounds, because we want to look at how we can improve the environment around school. You give a description there. How can school outdoor environment be improved? You can link in any media that you wish here as well. So you can see that if you maybe use Kahoot for questions, that can be linked directly in here. If there's something from Google, you can bring that directly in here. You can also record a video as a stimulus at this point as well, or if you've got a video from somewhere else and you pre-recorded it in a different platform, you can upload and bring that in. You can also link to YouTube videos. Word of warning there, I've had a few frustrated teachers come back to me. If you're filtering for pupils and students, block YouTube. It's absolutely pointless using a YouTube video, so you need to be really sure that you can get that in there. So there's lots of different types of media like Adobe Spark and so forth you can get in, or Nearpod if you use that as another platform, or if you use Wakelet as well. So lots of opportunities to add in media, and when you click on it, it will just simply look for the media on your computer. You drag it into there, and away you go. You upload it. I won't do that now because it normally takes a little while to upload the media, but it's quick and easy to do, and it won't cause you any problems. So you can, on the permission side, from a safeguarding perspective, you can have a guest password. So you can either have guests in or not. And I would say if you're using this with pupils and students from a safeguarding perspective, do not have guests. But if you did choose to have guests, you can toggle that to on, and you can have a password for guests, and they need to enter that password before they get in. And I'd always advocated making it GDPR compliant with an uppercase, lowercase letter, number and symbol. But because I'm intending to use this with students, I'm going to toggle that off so there isn't any guest access whatsoever. And the essential section, you can have topic moderation. So one of the fears that I quite frequently get voiced from people when they hear that students can post video responses is, well, what happens if somebody takes a liberty with that and they've left a video that's got offensive content, it's rude, it's disrespectful, it's going to upset a certain area of the students in school, well, you can enable topic moderation, so you can have control over that as the teacher. If topic moderation is enabled, it means that the videos are submitted as responses by the students and pupils, if that's the audience you're working with. But what they won't do is automatically become visible to the other pupils and students. It will hold in a lobby area for you to watch and decide if it's fit to be released. And only at the point that you approve it will then it become visible to the other students and pupils. So if you know you're concerned, you think you've got a few characters that you work with in your class or your group, that might be something to enable as topic moderation. I quite frequently leave it switched on unless I really trust the people I'm working with. The recording time is something else you need to save, and down here it's by default 1 minute and 30 seconds. I normally say something between 1 minute or less is better. If you know that you've got a demographic of parents where they've got really good, strong broadband and it's fiber and it's not going to cause them a problem, they can get away with uploading something bigger than 1 minute 30 seconds. But videos by their nature are quite bulky in size, and if you start to get long videos, sometimes they fail to upload because of the size of the video file and the speed of the connection that the pupil, the parent or the student has at home. So keeping that video record time small also helps to concentrate their response, because they have to make sure that they get in everything they need to mention in that space of time. So one of the reasons why I usually select a minute is because they have to be punchy with their response, but they also have to be concise with what they're saying. Then over here, you can choose about the comments on the video responses. So you can have the ability for students and pupils to comment on other people's video responses. If you think that's going to be misused, or you're questioning whether you can trust them on that, you can change it so it's videos only or text comments only or none. So I'm going to say at the moment I'm not going to have any comments used in this group. And then in here you can allow closed captions. So you can choose closed captions in other languages. I'm going to put mine on for United Kingdom, but you can choose other languages in there too. Now at this point, if you know that's your setup pretty much you want for all of your groups, you can save this as a default template for all topics that are going to come thereafter, or you can just go ahead and create your topic. But there are more hidden options that people often overlook, and they're tucked away here on the bottom left-hand corner where you hit more options. So if we scroll down there, as well as being able to insert the media from above, we've also got other attachment options here. Now, this is where you can insert a link for something like a website. If you are linking to another resource, it might be you've got a OneNote in a shared area that is going to be accessible by pupils or students. One of the things I would say, if you are adding a link and it's going to be in a shared area, make sure that the people that you're giving the link to have permission to go in that area. Otherwise, they're going to get a contact your administrator. You don't have privileges to come into this area, and it just gets frustrating for everyone, because you'll get a deluge of questions to you and they'll get frustrated they can't get to the resource that you're trying to give them. You can also give it a title up to 30 characters, and then you can carry on adding more and more attachments if you wish, or you can take them out and just have the one. So there's the option there to have attached documents. Sometimes people with topics might say, well, there is a form or a template I want you to use. Maybe I want you to make a PowerPoint response. I want you to type into this Word writing frame, might be an Excel spreadsheet. All of those can be included with the topic, and it's quite easy then to pick them up from a single place rather than having to go and search for them elsewhere. Just like the group or grid, the topic can be active or frozen or hidden. The reason that you've got active is that you want pupils or students to be using it, or whichever the other audience is. It can be hidden if you want to build it in private. So you might make the group public, but actually you don't want people to see all the topics that are being made, so you could have it as hidden. Or it could be active for a period of time. So I would say, look, it can be active from the 10th of June. And you could say that it's never going to stop being active. Or do you know what? When it gets to Friday, the 25th of June, it's going to stop being active at that point. Or I can have beyond the scheduled activity, I can freeze it. So if I freeze it, it means there can't be any more additions to that topic in the way of responses, and it's there for people to use, but it's frozen in time. They can't add anything else new to it. I think I need to update my time zone settings so I'm getting American date format. Your notifications, again, here we chose notifications for the topic. I said weekly for that. You might want it to be more frequent for a topic because you might be using this with a class or a subject or a set. So I tend to usually leave that to daily. So at the end of the day, I get an email with all the activity that's taken place. I don't tend to, again, make those notifications available for others when I'm working with pupils or students. But I do if I'm working with adults, because normally there are a group of staff or a group of governors, and it's not going to hurt for them to see what's going on. The video responses here, you have a lot more ability to tailor what happens in those responses. So you can say what you want to have in the way of cover image effects. So that's images that sit on top of the video, and will show you in the way of a response what that looks like. So you could say that they can have covered images, or it's videos only. If they are going to make a response, then that's something to consider, because sometimes you can get an overuse of it and it detracts from what they're saying. So if you want it just to be the individual, then I'd advocate videos only. Down here, you can have attachment links available for externals, or you can have likes for videos. I would say likes are pretty much Marmite between the teachers I've worked with. Some people say that likes make it more social media, and that sits better with the pupils and students they're working with, and actually it doesn't detract from what they're doing. And others say, look, it just gets in the way, so leave it off. Your choice. I'd say try it with one group and see what happens. You can give pupils and students, whoever you're working with, the ability to download and share the response videos that are submitted. For safeguarding, if you're using pupils and students, I would turn that off, because if they download a video and then share it on another social media platform, you've lost control of it, and you've got no way of stopping them keep sharing it perpetually, or maybe it causes an issue if they're using that to make fun of somebody or affect their mental well-being. You can allow people to edit their video after they've made their response. So it's a really simple video editing tool. It's like cut the beginning or trim the end and so forth. If you think that's not necessary and you want them to do it in one take or something, you can switch off video editing, but there's no harm in leaving video editing on. The video count displays the number of videos that have been received, and you can have sticky notes while you're recording, so that effectively you can write on the surface of a sticky note and that can appear as well. Sticky notes sometimes are useful. People put bullet pointed lists on, and that captures the high level summary of what they're talking around, but they do discuss that in their video response at the same time. Feedback at the bottom, you can get feedback, but it is something that's going to be removed by Flipgrid in August, so I'm not going to labour it too much. All I will say about it is I would leave it as basic, although you can go in and have other customised options, but it's not going to be here for much longer, so there's not a lot of reason to leave that. Once you've got all of those choices made, you create your topic, and after it's created, you'll get the same sharing options that you had before. You choose how you want to share it, and you go all set or press across, and then now I'm inside my topic. You can add a picture to your topic, and at the top you will be able to add that in. Go through and change any of those options at the same time. It's up to you if you want to do that. I'm just going to come back out a minute. You've got your ability in here, because I'm logged in as a member of staff, to see what it would look like as a student from their view. So if I click that, it will open up in another tab. I've got to enter my join code from here, because that's what I would experience as a student if I'm not scanning the QR code. I'll press that a minute, pop that in there, go again. Oh, it's not going to like it. Maybe it hasn't provisioned yet in the background. Okay, we won't waste too long with that, but you would go through, and instead of you seeing the teacher view as some of the options you got at the top here, it'll be more of a stripped back version. Now, I haven't got any responses left here. I'll take you over to another topic and a group where there's been some responses and some greater use made. But if you want to share, you've got the ability to press a sharing button and you can share the group with other people. If you don't want sharing on, again, you go back and choose that in your topic options. In the dots on the side here, just like the group, you can delete the topic, or you can export the data afterwards. And we've spoken in some of the other sessions that I've run recently for MIE and MIEE, the use of something called Immersive Reader. Now, it shouldn't be that literacy demand is a barrier to being successful in leaving a response. And if you need to have this read to you, you use Immersive Reader, which is pretty much across the whole of Office 365. But if you click it, it will then bring you into a stripped back view of the text that's on screen. And what you can do is you can get that read to you. So if you press the play button,
how can the school outdoor environment be improved?
It will read it to you. You can change things such as the voice you've got and the speed that the text is read at. You can also go in here, and if you were visually impaired and you needed text larger, you might need a different colored background. So you've got a pale background, you've got a green background. It will give you those adjustments as well. And in here, if you maybe got dyslexia and there's still too much text on screen, you can narrow that down with a line focus, or you can turn the line focus off. And then you can have things like picture dictionary on, which when you click on a word, you will get the pictorial version of that or the single word to be read. And then the final thing that you've got in here is the ability for EAL pupils or parents and guardians that don't have English as a primary language. You can choose the other language. So maybe if they were speaking Danish, let's say, you can say by word, or you can have that for the whole document, and it will change it for them, so that if they as a pupil or a student working at home are coming to this because you've set this as a homework, they can't understand some of the words that are there. Well, that's fine. They can convert the entire thing into their language. That only affects their view, doesn't affect anybody else's view. They can always toggle it back to the original version or the Danish version. If they click on a single word, they can see that Scollens is the Danish for school, and there's the English version, and there's the picture dictionary. If you want to come out of the Immersive Reader, it's across Flipgrid, you just press the arrow in the top corner and you're back again in the topic. Before we go over and have a look at a Flipgrid that's had a few responses and it's been more widely used, are there any questions about topics at all, or how to use topics? No? Okay, I will continue. If we go back to Flipgrid at the top, as we can see here, the environment one is hidden. It's not visible to anybody else. If I went to, let's say, the expeditions topic, in here we were having a look at a space project called Space Safari. So my group is just called expeditions because we're going to have different expeditions. One of my expeditions was to go and have a space safari. There will be other expeditions that will happen. So with my space safari, I go into my topic, and then in here I can see, here's a description I've given people about what I want them to do in my space safari, about going and picking a different planet or moon or in the solar system, and then giving me a brief summary. And the summary is going to be like a mission report, and they're going to do it in a video, almost like they are out there on a spacecraft and they're leaving their response as their video response. But for me as a teacher, I can then assess how much progress they've made with their learning, how secure they are within what we're covering. But I can just do it by watching a video. So I haven't got a book to mark, and they get to be creative in the way they leave their video. So if I picked Steph, who I know has given me permission to share her video, and I would say, click on there. And then,
are you finding Earth a little too warm? Not enough time in the day? Need a change of scenery? You don't even need to leave the universe. Try
you get the idea. So I can then watch Steph's response, and I can see from Titan, I can get an understanding of what she's understood about, I think she chose Mars, and the atmosphere on Mars and so forth. If I want to get back to my space safari, I just use the path at the top to go back one level and then back here, and I can see my responses. Now that response is active, so I could say I wanted that hidden. And if I wanted that hidden, that might be because I'm just worried about that student's video being seen by other students. So although they're automatically posting, I've still got some control or a degree of control over that. And in here, you've got other options such as sharing a link for that forward. So it could be that you want to showcase what that individual has said, maybe to raise standards across the whole of the class, or share it in a team because you've still got some people that are in a blended learning scenario, or maybe you've got a bubble that's gone down and you want to share it that way. So you could have students viewing in here, or you could be selective, and as a teacher you select which one is shared out, whichever way you want to work it. If you want to make a response, when you go to make your response, you simply click on it and it will bring you into a video capture window. I won't do that now. I tried it earlier, but my broadband seems to be suffering today, and I know that I'm going to lose you on this session. But all that happens is you get what looks like a rectangle that pops up in the middle of the screen with a record button, and then you press the record button and you talk at the webcam, and what it will do is it will then record your response, and then you get a chance to edit it or add on any effects or add those post-it notes in and then post it. You can, if you wish, record that video outside of Flipgrid and then upload your video into a response as well. That's perfectly fine. So if you were using Teams, or maybe you were using Stream in Office 365 or any other video recording software, you can do that outside of the Flipgrid platform and bring it in anyway. It's whichever way makes sense for the students you're going. If some schools have said, look, we've got something like an iPad and we're going to use the app that's on there, and then we're just going to log into the Safari browser on the iPad and we're going to upload it from there out of the camera roll on the iPad. That's fine, and that will work. The only thing you need to make sure is probably in advance have a little dummy run and check that the school's broadband or the broadband at home for the students can cope with doing that, and it will be something that they can willingly do. Are there any questions seeing a developed topic or what a group would look like with topics in it? Has anybody got anything they wish to ask about those? And I said, there's my flip over my students so I can see my list of students, see when their videos were on and so forth. So I've got a high degree of control as a teacher. Any questions at all in those respects? Okay, if there isn't, I will swap back over to the presentation. Just switching screens for you now. So the other beauty in here in Flipgrid is that there used to be something that was called Skype in the classroom, and it was disbanded. But what you can do now with Flipgrid, it's adopted some of the functionality of Skype in the classroom. So you can use it to work across other schools or get in touch with schools that are undertaking like-minded Flipgrid projects in groups or topics, or you can use it to connect with guest speakers or guest presentations that have been pre-recorded. Now, all of those are available in what's called the Discover library, and that's especially useful, I found, in trusts that have certain academies in there. And what you can do is you can work across those different academies in the same trust, and it means that you haven't got to have students coming in and out of classrooms with possible contamination of bubbles or even staff going from other places. You can use this as another platform to work across the academies that you've got in your trust. The MEC, as I mentioned earlier, the Microsoft Education Center, has two really good Flipgrid courses in there. One is called Engage and Amplify with Flipgrid, and you'll find that pretty easily when you're logged into the MEC. On the other one's called Beyond the Basics with Flipgrid. As it suggests from the name, that's what to do after you become a little bit more confident with the way that you're using Flipgrid. I wouldn't advise going to that one straight of all. Flipgrid has got a really good supportive community around it, and the Flipgrid team are absolutely amazing. You ask a question, they're back to you in a minute with a response. And if you're asking it in any of the Flipgrid communities, there's so many enthusiastic people out there that have adopted and regularly used Flipgrid. They will be willing to give you an insight into how they've used it, or if you're facing a particular problem, you're not sure how to engage with a particular audience, they will give you some insight into how to do it. There's also professional development materials in the Flipgrid website, and there's also some teacher materials in there that will save you recreating the wheel. And certainly if you're going to try go back to your school or your college and show them what Flipgrid is, you're welcome to show this video from today. But there's also a pre-made presentation that you can use and run through in there. So if you're trying to show the senior leadership team the value of using Flipgrid, you don't have to prepare anything. You can go and pick up the deck from in there and just use it in your school. So before I move over and give you the code, are there any final questions around Flipgrid or anything I've showed you this afternoon? Or if you are using Flipgrid already and you want to share the success you've had, feel free to open up and talk to the other people we've got here today, or anyone who's watching this recording at a later date. No? Okay. Well, I will move over and we'll share the code with you now to redeem in the Microsoft Education Centre. For those people that haven't done it before, once you're logged into the Microsoft Education Centre, as it shows in the bottom left-hand corner screenshot, you will see initials where it says LA in my example instead of sign in. If you press your initials, you'll then get a little pop-out menu, and where I've circled in blue, it will say redeem achievement code. That will then give you a pop-up box in the middle of the window, which is the redeem code box in the screenshot on the right-hand side. And then the code in the top right hand corner of my screen next to number 2 is the code you need to type in. And then that code can be used to get your accreditation for coming along today. And that will give you 1,000 custom points and allow you to become a certified MIE straight away. I'll also go and grab that code and post it into the chat for anyone that's trying to copy it off the screen. You'll be able to copy and paste it out of the conversation that we've got today. I'm going to pop that in there now. And feel free to share that with colleagues as well if they want to get accredited and they've watched this video afterwards, maybe at a later time. You're welcome to use that code too. We'll leave that code open if they want to add it to their MEC area. While people are doing that, is there anything else that anybody has any questions over, anything else anybody wants to discuss at all? Turn it on, or Microsoft are quite happy to talk further with you if you think you need support. We regularly work with schools on professional development programs, staff training, digital transformation. So we manage change management for a lot of schools and colleges. If you're interested in that, please contact office@turniton. We work with Microsoft. So if you do contact Microsoft at the Edu community address, they will probably refer you back to us anyway. But thank you very much for coming along today. I want to say a massive thank you. I know that you are all really busy and I know you haven't given up time to come along, but I appreciate you coming. I'll remain here for a little bit in case you have any questions.